In the most fascinating yet disturbing display of power, the majestic creation tore through the crowd of Sed, ripping them apart with a zeal I have never seen before. At that moment, he looked, felt, and was more than an alien from far beyond. He was an ally. One I would never forget. After the chaos was done and the corpses of the Seds lined the floor, he dropped down on his knees next to the bodies and began to devour them whole, without the slightest show of hesitation. In 1910, the United States military had just already sent in explorers, well-equipped and reinforced to face whatever lay on the other side of the rift. Personally, I had seen it from behind the screen while performing some confidential work and could not believe my eyes. You could only have heard about these occurrences in movies, but now, a rift between two dimensions had split open wide in the Californian desert. On one side, our world lay. On the other, a completely unknown and unresearched world that was in every way different from ours. The exploration team had gone out in multitudes, but out of close to 20 soldiers and a few researchers who braved the unknown, only 4 came running out, and they were never the same. These men showed destructive tendencies, rage in the eyes, and an inability to speak or communicate. They only wanted one thing: to attack and destroy any living form in their way. They didn't last long, and their deaths were no beauty. What remained of these men were grotesque and utterly disfigured bodies with no trace of bone, but rather a calcified fungus that took over every part that once had bones. It was believed these fungi were breathed in by the men, which took over quickly. At least, that's what the autopsy said. It was clear that whatever happened on the other side was not friendly. The military had the rift completely surrounded and heavily guarded. There were no other attempts at getting in after that incident. 1914, something otherworldly was spotted peering out from the ripple in space into our world. It was hard to truly describe what it looked like, but it was far from human. Once sighted, the military pulled out their best moves against the creature, but unfortunately, it appeared the creature was unaffected by human weaponry, making our attempts look like child's play. Like it wasn't bad enough, the creature's presence had such a strong pull on reality it literally made things happen by mere sight, like strokes, heart attacks, and in some cases, spontaneous physical mutations in the guards. The creature left, but would occasionally return and cause even more havoc to anyone nearby before departing, almost like it was examining Earth. The military soon in 1923 commenced several operations to close the rift at any cost. But the outcome? They created another ripple in space, like a reinforced screen peering into another dimension. Soon, a tornado of current filled with dazzling stars burst through the screen. Soon, it took the form of several creatures warping between the sizes of a rat to that of an elephant. It too caused an immense change in reality and eventually settled in a more humanoid figure. Its physical appearance could only be described as chaotic beauty. Brilliance. In the most dramatic ways possible. The military managed to contain the creature and attempted to study it. We now knew that the creature excreted waste filled with the fungus that affected the first explorers, amongst other fascinating features like bleeding white fumes. Anyone who came in contact with it would be warped into various ages from 1 to 80, and eventually die. As I and the team watched the creature in containment from the screens, the handler, who was in there with him, entered a panicked state, screaming, "They've already come! This is what will come! This is what has come!" As we watched, the space behind him broke loose, unleashing another creature, which was termed Sed. Bright and starry, emerged. At that moment, the cameras went black, and by the time we got visual, the handler was a pile of bone, dried out soup on the floor. The intruder was gone, and the creature was kind of knitting the ripple in space together. Soon it was done, successfully closing the ripple before grieving by the side of the human remains. A show of emotion we'd never seen before. It became clear that the intruders were after us, and our only hope against them was the creature. Over time, many more intruders would break open ripples in space into Earth's atmosphere. And every time, The creature helped fight back and knit the ripple back up. The military believed we needed more, and soon commenced a breeding program to produce the creature's kind. There were many fatal trials and failures, but ultimately, we discovered that the creature's offspring could only survive in the male body and would use tentacles to feed on nutrients from the intestines and stomach. In the earliest cases, the offspring fused with the human and were inherently male. Some turned out to be calmer, weaker, and very emotional, throwing tantrums when they were distressed, and capable of predicting the coming of the intruders. They were termed Roe, and they were kept and studied. The rest were more hostile and prone to strike at anything perceived as a threat with bad tempers and no care for anything. These were termed Sharam and were euthanized. Some fetuses would simply devour their human host, killing them from within. This was the case with a breeding test in 1994, where one had fed her way out and sewed the human back up. Though the human did not make it, this was a first, and an indicator that we had finally found the one. As we watched from the screens, rooms away, just moments after the female being was done knitting its host back up, the ripple happened, and a Set appeared from it. The camera went black, and soon we rushed to investigate the situation. On arrival, we found the Sed incapacitated in its portal, and the being alongside his daughter scrambling to seal the ripple. I asked what happened, but communication with the being was limited. Over the years, the being used puppet shows from matter it manipulated to display messages. In this particular display, it showed a scene. A fetus, just like its offspring, was born after eating through its host and sprouting out, growing into a man. The creature was then placed on a ship and sent into space, where it was met with hordes of the intruders. In the most fascinating yet disturbing display of power, the majestic creation tore through the crowd of Sed, ripping them apart with a zeal I have never seen before. At that moment, he looked, felt, and was more than an alien from far beyond. He was an ally. One I would never forget. After the chaos was done and the corpses of the Seds lined the floor, he dropped down on his knees next to the bodies and began to devour them whole, without the slightest show of hesitation. The being remarked that the Sharam killed the Seds, and yet here we were killing them. I felt horrid about that, but that was never my choice. In the next moment, the Sed laying on the floor through the portal opened its mouth, and out of it poured dark gases that filled the room. I could feel my body irritate, and soon my skin was forming a mash. Everything hurt, and I knew I was turning into one of those dreadful corpses. Soon, I lost consciousness. I awoke in the hospital. Apparently, the being had saved me from becoming a disfigured corpse, before knitting back the ripple and disappearing with its daughter. Researchers believed it was because we were killing the Sharam it left. 2 years later, it returned without its daughter, and I was quickly called upon to extract information from it. My questions were answered with symbols and signs. "Where do they come from?" I asked. "What are they?" "You will not understand." I believed this, but the understanding wasn't my prerogative. Survival was. "Tell me anyway." The being hid its face and began to tremble. "You will hate me. I could never hate you. I did not come to love you. I am not meant to love you. I only love you because your reality makes it so." "What do you mean?" I asked. "They are the rest of me." The being was right. I didn't understand. Neither did anyone else. No one ever would. The being never communicated again. 2015. The US military confirmed that the daughter of the being was being held at a Russian base, alongside several Sharam. They would euthanize their roes. We learned that the roe broke into hysteria and several died. Later, a Sed attacked the base from the sky. The being who had been with us teleported where it fought till its death. However, it incapacitated the Sed before dying. The remaining Sharam attacked it and ate it to death. The being after its death decomposed to nothing but flowers and fungus. Weeks later, the roe attacked each other and killed themselves off, followed by the Sharam who died due to a mass case of psychosis. The base was abandoned, and all that was left there were fungus and flowers. We later found the daughter of the being. Named Ashra, she was ready to fight for humanity, and with this, the Space Force was created. The Seds have attacked constantly from skies. Now with the help of the Sharam and Ashra, the military can launch expeditions to space to close rifts and battle the Seds. One thing is sure, we will never understand what they are, and the fungus will continue until it takes all living things, and there is nothing we can do about it.